And coming up on this week's show, the Dawlish Sea Wall collapses in 2 places after Storm Ingrid hit Devon and Cornwall. Is it finally time for a new route between Exeter and Plymouth? Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander signs agreements with northern leaders, but what do they actually commit to? And ORR makes a stunning confession about the Avanti West Coast Ghost train. Welcome to Green Signals from me, Nigel Harris, and...
from me, Richard Bowker.
Well, Richard, Storm Ingrid certainly battered the southwest this weekend, didn't it? Causing not only huge damage to coastal towns and villages, but also, yet again, to the iconic Dawlish Sea Wall, which collapsed in a couple of places, inflicting yet more disruption on the Great Western Main Line. Now, Network Rail had issued a black alert, its highest warning level, for only the second time since the massive storm of 2014 destroyed lengthy sections of track around Dawlish. Now, following this storm, Network Rail's James Crook reported that debris on the track had been cleared despite pretty trying conditions, and I'm sure we can imagine that, and speed restrictions were in place, causing delays. He said, "The priority is making sure we can get things back up and normal for Monday." He added that there were a number of issues on the track, including ballast, which had washed away. There will be some work going on throughout the week, he said. Interesting about the ballast being washed away, Richard, because they glue it down there now, don't they? As I think they do in a few places. But even that was overwhelmed by Ingrid. There have inevitably been calls to dust off plans for reopening the line via Oakhampton, so there'd be a bypass and 2 routes between Exeter and Plymouth. But before we chat about that, Richard managed to speak with Network Rail Western Route Director Marcus Jones, who is responsible for this section of line, to find out what went on over the weekend and how NR coped with Storm Ingrid's ferocity.
Well, Marcus, welcome to Green Signals. I'm so grateful for you spending some time with us. I know well, I don't know really, and we'll talk about it briefly, but I know it has been a very trying time at the moment. I wonder if we could just sort of break this up a bit, just start with the coastal section that everybody obviously knows well, around Dawlish and to Timoth and so on. I suppose first thing is, it looks to me as if the works that you've done there on the seawall have done their job. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Richard. And yeah, it's been a definitely challenging 72 hours, and the teams have been amazing. The hard work that's gone into restoring the railway, and still got trouble today. But in terms of, we've got a lot of people out there doing, work in horrible conditions to get us going. So a huge thanks to them. But to the seawall section, absolutely. From a resilience point of view, we've invested 165 million over the last few years into that area, and we can see that the new seawall section stood up phenomenally well to the storm. So protecting the town, the railway, and the damage that we saw was either side of it, but also it was relatively minor damage in regards to what we've seen for a black alert. So definitely from a point of view of where we're sitting now, we're in a far better place than certainly 2014. But considering this was our first real test since then of a black alert, actually, yeah, the railway stood up phenomenally well, to be honest.
I saw some of the people that were affected in their homes, and particularly the poor residents in Tor Cross. And pictures of literally the sea coming into their living rooms. And they were saying, look, they've never seen anything like it. It was as bad as they can remember, which I suppose speaks even more to the fact that the works done on the seawall did a great job.
100%. And if you sort of see some of the photos in which the seawall was actually doing as it's designed, where it was taking the waves away from the railway, which created some spectacular imagery. But it just shows how the design and the hard work that went into that and the investment that we've put in really has been beneficial. And kind of with it being the first black alert as well, it's the first time it's really been tested. So, for our point of view, awful the surrounding areas, but it's great to see that part of the wall did its job and that investment has paid off.
So just very quickly, because we don't want to get too bogged down in detail, but just break down the numbers a bit. So 165 million. Some of that's gone into seawall, some of that's gone into cliff work, hasn't it? Just roughly, how does it sort of break down?
Well, it breaks down between, so the seawall was the main chunk, and I believe that was sort of around about 85 to 100 million.
Right.
Then there's the Parsons Tunnel cover, and that was designed for the cliffs to prevent the cliffs coming onto the railway. We've also invested in remote condition monitoring in the cliffs in the Teignmouth area. So again, if we do have an issue in the areas that we haven't done, we are able to safely stop trains. And then there's other areas in terms of some track formation areas that means that we can recover better following incidents, which kind of fits into our dry spine concept that I think has been discussed previously by Julie Gregory with you. So in terms of that's where we're trying to develop it into how we get the railway back quicker following incidents as sort of part of a long-term strategy.
And so, just in terms of those works on the kind of the rock walls, which that plan I know was to do some more netting and anchoring, whatever, and you're focused more on condition monitoring at the moment. There was a bit of expenditure that was you'd hoped to be able to do. That's not been possible in this control period. Presumably, that's something that you might like to do in the future if funds became available. It's not something that's kind of gone away as a desirable. It's just not something you've been able to do at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the Southwest Resilience Programme, SWERP, we do have a number of phases to it. Phase 5 is the sort of the next phase, which looks into the area between Parsons Tunnel and Teignmouth. So there is a scheme under development. We have still got a little bit of funding that enables us to keep doing that.
Okay.
But we've also got some works going on where we're trialling taking water out the cliffs. So the point of that is to try and prevent the water getting right into the cliffs that causes them to fall. So we've got the trial of that at the moment to see how successful that is. But obviously, if funding's available, there is absolutely more we would do in that area, which we've got sort of an outline plan for.
And we've had another storm, which is like, they kind of come, don't they? And so I think this one's Chandra, isn't it? Has that impacted the sort of the seawall coastal section, or have you been able to keep running through that?
The biggest thing we've actually had the problem with in the storms is the ability to inspect after. So we have to inspect all the structures once the storm's happened. And because the sea's been so rough, we've actually not been able to get to in all of them. So we've had to run sort of a more limited service. But Storm Chandra has actually, from a Dawlish Sea Wall point of view and in that area, we've actually been okay. But we still have a couple of sites we've got to fix from Storm Ingrid earlier in the week.
So where you've got challenges, and just kind of, I suppose, bringing this together is, I know I saw this morning some very serious flooding on the line between Taunton and Exeter. I mean, that does look pretty challenging. Is it going to be a while? We were recording this about 8:30 on Wednesday morning. I presume it's going to be a little while before the floodwaters are down and you can actually go and do the inspections you need to.
I think in terms of breaking it main line to the branch lines, where main line wise Heel flooded very badly yesterday.
That was the picture I saw. Yeah,
that's that was pretty heavy. But that we've got back now in the down is got speed restriction on, and the up is actually fine for line speed. So the teams again overnight replacing ballast. Yeah, have done a phenomenal job. And then the last area is sort of the cog load section. So as of today, we're sort of up trains are diverting via Box to London, and then the down road trains are going still down down that route because we've got that section back. So I'm hoping from a mainline point of view that the next couple of days will be normal working, subject to any more rain, because it's absolutely sodden down there. But the branch lines we have got more of a problem with. So we have sort of 7-8 washout sites. So that's where the ballast has disappeared. And in particular, the Loo branch is under a lot of water. And the Newquay branch has got a number of sites, but also the Oakhampton and Barnstable. So pretty much all the branch lines, I think we're looking at more days than hours to resolve.
I suppose the message there, Marcus, is check before you travel. Right now, you need to do that. I just want to one final thing, and it's not really a question. I just think it's kind of just a comment, really. I mean, the the guys and girls of Network Rail, I mean, it is extraordinary. Whilst we're all tucked up in bed, you say that they're out dealing with things like inspections in foul conditions. I mean, just give us a sort of sense of what they've done, because I don't think people really understand just what an extraordinary effort this is.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of from the Dawlish at the weekend, they cleared sort of 20 tons of debris, replenished sort of 15, 20 tons of ballast, made sure all the signalling system is working, so testing all of that before we're allowed to run again. So in terms of, we had up to about 50 people in Dawlish, but then it's quite a small team. It's the maintenance team overnight yesterday repairing all that. So, you're looking at 15 to 20 people that are going site to site. And it does make you feel really proud because they're so dedicated. And as an industry, we're so proud of them, but also we've worked really closely together, which is the big thing. We've got a really good working relationship with Great Western Railway. They've enabled us to go in and fix Dawlish and also make sure we're prioritising the right services that we run. And we've got a great plan for today. That means we can still keep people moving, albeit with quite a lot of disruption. But yeah, the teams have been amazing, Richard, to be honest. And yeah, we can't thank them enough.
Well, we'd like to add our thanks to that. I'm sure people listening will do as well. Thank you for joining us, Marcus. Really appreciate it. Thank you to all of those who've worked so hard through very difficult conditions to get the railway back open as quickly as they can. Good luck with the next phase. And maybe at some point it'd be great to come and have a look at what you guys are doing down there, because but it is great that it seems that the works that were put in place have done their job. So fingers crossed for now. But for now, Marcus, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
So there you go, Richard. Fascinating stuff, isn't it? And good to hear you praising the people out on the track. I remember you shot a video, didn't you, coming back from from Paignton, I think, once on the train, and you have some shots of water streaming down the window from inside the train there. It must have been very unpleasant working on the track in those conditions, clearing debris. So let's just tip our hats to those men and women.
What I thought was interesting, what he said, was the speed with which they can kind of get the main lines back up and running. I mean, having seen the footage of Heel, which is between Taunton and Exeter, last night I thought there is no chance, right? And then here it is, the day later, sort of back open again and in one direction, running at line speed. So, as you rightly say, hat tip to them. Issues with the branches, but at least the main lines are working, yeah.
And it is important because it is their only link to the rest of the network, which, of course, is why it's all revived very long-standing calls for a second rail route to ensure the trains can always run, which Network Rail has previously investigated. And I suspect I might have an inkling of your views on this, Richard, but do go on.
Well, I'm not sure about this line about is the only link on the network. Well, the same's true of the Far North line, the West Highland line, the North Wales main line, right? They are the links to those places.
But this is the only one with such an exposed piece of coast railway, which is really battered to that degree. That's the point, isn't it?
Yes, although I think it's the one that has the most media-friendly images when it does get hit, because we've all seen the incredibly dramatic images. I mean, it is worth just a quick recap, what these guys have done, because obviously talked about it there with Marcus. When they had that terrible storm of 2014 that you referred to, which, interesting enough, some of the people, the poor residents of that area talking about this later storm, said actually the latest one was the worst they'd ever seen, worse than then. Yeah. And of course, in 2014, as you say, quite a lot of the seawall was washed away. It was badly breached. It took 8 weeks to fix it, which I have to say, when I saw the original images in 2014, I just thought, that's not going to be an 8-week job.
With the track hanging in midair by that row of houses, yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable. And it was a Herculean effort, which they spent sort of 35, 40 million on sorting. Now, what it did do, though, was it prompted the government to give Network Rail the green light, if you like, to explore other options. And they produced a document called the West of Exeter sort of route resilience study, I think it was called. It was West of Exeter options. And it had in it a number of options that they looked at, ranging from, if I can describe it as such, carry on as you are, right, through to really invest in the existing line, through to, in the most extreme case, a sort of brand new line, which was mainly in tunnel, from what I remember, sort of cutting off the corner, right? But the one that got a lot of people excited was, as you say, creating a diversionary route via Oakhampton and Meldon Quarry, Tavistock, and then connecting with the Gunnislake branch at a place called Bear Alston and coming into Plymouth that way. The former Southern Railway, I suppose, southwestern route to Plymouth. And that got people excited. The problem is, all Network Rail's analysis at the time said the business case, there's our friend again, simply did not stack up. I mean, the benefit cost ratios were appallingly low. And so they didn't do any of them, right? They carried on doing what they've done. And I have to say, for point of discussion, looks to me like what they've done, which is all that work on the seawall, including the stuff in 2022, 23, has worked. So for 24 hours, yes, it's very disruptive, but actually it worked. It's not shut for 8 weeks, and I think that's the point, isn't it?
Well, that's right. Just if you forgive me for being in super nerd mode for the moment, it didn't connect into the Gunnislake branch. It connected into Bear Alston, which is a junction station for the Gunnislake branch.
There you go.
That was.
But today it's the Gunnislake branch.
Well, it's where it reverses there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yes, interestingly, and if you looked at carefully at the pictures of the damage of this one, which Marcus confirmed, it was bits of the older defences on either side of the bits that they fettled, if you like, that failed. And it was largely just old bits of wall which didn't clear the rubble and rebuild, which is no small thing, but it's nowhere near as big as they did do. Because that was a huge job, wasn't it? I seem to remember they put a load of containers down to make a breakwater so they could work behind it. It was
effectively almost like a cofferdam, wasn't it?
It was an incredible piece of work.
It was. And look what it's done. It's kind of done its job, right? And I think this is the problem for people. Everybody goes, oh, well, it proves we need another route. Whereas to me, it actually proves we probably don't. Right? Let me explain. So the line over Oakhampton, which obviously been reopened to Oakhampton very successfully. So it's the branch from Exeter, and you can catch a train to Oakhampton.
And there was a scheme to reopen from Bear Alston off to Tavistock, wasn't there?
So there was. You're absolutely right.
Each end of the line, there were one end's been done, and the other still might be.
Yeah.
So
so the line to Tavistock, which is something that Devon County Council were very keen to pursue under the Restoring Your Railways scheme. I mean, scheme's being very kind to it. Programme is being very kind to it. But anyway, the idea was to create a single track branch from Bear Alston to Tavistock, which is a serious place. I mean, Tavistock is a substantial community. And they produced a business case for that, which I've seen, a strategic outline business case. It was a very low cost solution, right? So the station was going to be out of town because the former alignment through Tavistock has been built on. There's a housing estate. And
some council offices.
Council offices. I think there's a health centre, right? So they thought, no, that's too much. So they were going to build to a station to the outskirts of Tavistock, in effect, single track. So it was a low cost solution. But of course, then and I think that was something like costed 100 million. But that got canned when Restoring Your Railways, in my view, correctly, got canned as a programme. But that's not what Network Rail looked at in 2014. What they looked at was creating a double track railway to modern standards. Yes, right. And there are challenges. So the bit to Oakhampton's been reopened as a single track. It's not a double track main line. There's real problems just after Oakhampton at a place called Meldon Quarry, where it goes over Meldon. There's a Meldon Gorge. There's an incredible viaduct, which is dramatic. I think it's something like 40 odd meters high off the valley floor. Network Rail were quite clear in that report. It needs replacing. It's not fit for purpose. So that's a brand new viaduct. There's then...
I think it's listed as well, isn't it?
It is listed, yeah. I believe it is listed. I think Devon County Council are the custodians of it, and they're talking about spending about £3 million on it simply to keep it open as a walkway and a cycleway, right? Not to carry anything heavy on it, right? There's then some real problems with the line. I think it's between Meldon and Tavistock. Once you get the other side of Tavistock, the geology is not so bad. But there's the River Creedy Valley is subject to very significant flood problems. So Network Rail said in 2014, we'll probably have to raise about 13 kilometres of railway, 2 to 3 metres.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's
not just
why
a case of banging some track back on an abandoned track bed.
These railway arms are never that, right? They're never that. And if you look at some of the pictures of what the challenges are on that route, they're very significant. So they said around about 800 million, and this is 2014, by the way.
So we're talking $1 billion.
Ago, plus the flood works in the River Creedy if they need it. Now, they put 66% contingency in, which is fairly generous, and so on and so forth. The problem is, for the campaigners, $1 billion, let's just call it a round billion for a minute, and there might be an argument over plus or minus a couple of $100 million, what's that between mates, right? But let's say it's $1 billion compared to the fact that we spent all this money on the seawall and it works. Does not mean it is never subject to any disruption. It clearly is. Other parts of the network are also occasionally subject to disruption. But I've got to be honest, if I was sat there as a Network Rail planner or somebody in GBR, I would look at that and say, there are so many more priorities than that, because what we've got basically works most of the time. And Network Rail, I think, deserve great credit for that. So I don't think it does show a need for a second route. I think it shows that what we've done was the right thing to do for now.
You're never going to get the full justification for a second route, are you? I mean, you and I are slightly different on this. I mean, I think you should stack up all the potential benefits. That route could have a similar effect on the region as Borders and the Settling Carlisle has. There is some use for local traffic, so if you add up all those benefits, we then come to what you and I have talked about, is that political decision. Are you prepared to spend that money to bridge the gap?
But we're absolutely the same, Nigel. We're identical.
And the probably
economic analysis adds up all those benefits that you've just described. The problem for some people is when it doesn't give them the answer they want, they say, oh, well, you've not taken everything into account, right? And kind of people like me go, well, we have actually, right? So it does come down to what you said. It's that political decision, right?
And there's other priorities, bigger.
And there are priorities that are bigger. Now, if the Dawlish Sea Wall route, the coastal route, was shut 2 weeks a year, I would think we would be having a different conversation, right?
But it's not.
But it's not. Now, that doesn't mean we don't keep it under close monitoring over the next 5-10 years. Climate change is only getting more challenging. They were talking about the branch lines. The Loo branch at the moment is like literally underwater.
Underwater, isn't it?
So this is a problem that's not going to go away. But for the next 5 to 10 years, I believe there are other priorities. I don't understand why this needs another route any more than some other places could benefit from a diversionary. I think that is the point. And people won't want to hear that, right? Because most people want to reopen everything, right? Well, tough. I think Network Rail have shown that if you approach things in the right way, actually they've done a good job with this.
The Tavistock thing's worth just one final sentence or two, because it goes back way beyond the restoring your railways thing from the last few years. Yeah. I was writing stories about the Tavistock branch being rebuilt in 2006 and 2007. Used to talk to a chap called Peter Frost. And the intention was to have that reopened by 2014, and it was all in conjunction with a Section 106 roof tax proposal.
Sounds medieval.
Where they give permission for building houses, and there's a tax.
Section 106 is well known,
And it just somehow fizzled out and never came to anything. And I'd be curious to know, because it was really on target, and there's massive road congestion. Is it the A38? Whatever the road is.
Whichever the road, I think it is, But that's the point. Devon County Council had got a strategic outline business case, which I read the other day, actually. It's a perfectly sensible document for reopening a branch to Tavistock with an hourly service to Plymouth on the existing sort of branch line network, even with sort of optimism bias factored in, something like 100 million. And I can get why that is something they really, really want to do. But even if you did that, you'd still end up with single track line to Alston, and then one single track line going off to Gunnisley and another single track line going to Tavistock.
I mean,
it's not a diversionary route in any sense of the word.
It isn't. I mean, it's not as complicated as it might be in that at Alston you'd take the buffer stops off and then 5 miles right away to Tavistock. But the other side of Tavistock, as you say, there's a council office on the track bed and there's houses. I've seen pictures. And while borders prove you can deal with that sort of stuff, the prize has got to be worth it, hasn't it?
But those are all reasons why it's challenging to do. The reason why I don't think it should happen is because I just don't think the business case stacks up compared to what they are now achieving with the works they've done on the coastal route. That is the real point, and people down there will really not want to hear that because they think that this shows you need another route. I think it shows you don't yet.
Oh, you'll be off a few Christmas card lists there, Richard, but your shoulders
I'll add them to the list.
Broad enough to take that. Just one last thing, again, a hat tip to the engineers who designed the 2014 scheme, because I remember looking at all those drawings, and the sea wall's got that curves back towards the sea, doesn't it? As it gets to the top, with the idea it turns the waves back rather than allows them to crash over to the same degree.
Yeah.
And it seems to have worked, doesn't it? So well done then. So there must be some civil engineering glasses being raised at that testing.
I would like to think so, and they have done. Sometimes we do give Network Rail a hard time on some things. I think for this, they've done a great job, not just in the design of that, but also in the cleanup.
The guys out and girls out in the
done superb
vile weather in their orange, moving rubble and debris and everything else, and having waves breaking over the backs. That must have been
horrid.
Well, there's real safety risks apart from anything else. So
yeah. Anyway, should we move on to?
I think we should.
Another project, of course, which we talked about at some length last week, which
keeps
was
on
NPR.
Giving.
It is a bit the gift that keeps on giving. That's absolutely right. We've published an NPR explainer video, a little kind of 10-minute job, which I do, understandably commend people watch, but hopefully, we've sort of set everything in context. Now, there's been more activity since last week's show, Nigel. The Secretary of State, Heidi Alexander, went on a bit of a whirlwind tour of the North to meet with regional mayors and sign what the government have called compacts. I don't know. Why do they need to come up with these fancy words that they think make them sound clever? Right. It's basically just a memorandum of understanding or an agreement, right? That's what it is in English.
That sounds very dull, though, doesn't it?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, God, it doesn't sound as good as a compact. Anyway, whatever that means. There are apparently, I think, there's 6 of these with obviously the Mayor of the North East, Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, Liverpool, so on and so forth, South Yorkshire. And it says they confirm outline phasing, funding mechanisms, local contributions, and overall scope. They also establish how mayors and the government will collaborate on key design decisions. And I thought, what confirms all those things?
Wow.
Whoa, okay, that's good. Anyway, so I had a look. And I thought you'd enjoy a couple of extracts from the one that I just picked it at random, right? This is the one with the North East Mayor, Kim McGuinness, and it particularly focuses on the Leam sideline.
Okay.
Right? And these are some of the phrases in it. It's only about a page long. I think the only reason it goes to 2 pages is because there needs to be space for
I'm ready. Hit me with
signatures. Right. We have confirmed our shared ambition to unlock the untapped growth potential across the North. So in other words, we've confirmed that we're really interested in looking at this.
Confirmed an ambition. Got it.
We will in particular work jointly together to develop the growth plan for the North East. Right. So good thing to do, but we haven't got one quite yet. We're going to work together to do that. That's fine. In the decision made on route choices funded within the NPR programme, we will jointly aim to maximise the economic benefits of the North East. Now, you'd never write, we will jointly aim to miss that, or, I mean, it's a bit of a non-statement, right? But this is where the meat of it is. It says, the first phase of reopening the Leam sideline from Tyneside to Washington is already agreed to be led by the North East Mayor using funding from Devolved Transport for City Regions Fund. So that was the thing we talked about pre the spending review. That's where they're going to get a chunk of money, and it's a lot of money, to look at extending the metro that currently goes to Sunderland and then comes back into South Hilton, to then bring it back up the north end of the Leam side line, back up to Peelaw to join the network. So that's what they're talking about there. But then this is the bit that will get you. We will work with the North East on the business case for the remainder of the proposed Leamside reopening, including considering better connectivity for Sunderland, good, and subsequent delivery, subject to that business case, it actually says that, right, as part of ensuring MPR services reach Newcastle, right? And then it says, we will ensure that if HMG, that's His Majesty's government, agrees the business case and it demonstrates good VFM, value for money, that resources are made available. So in other words, it's all subject to business case. It's all subject to value for money. But I suppose on the good news is if it passes all those tests, which we call exit ramps, then they'll make funds available. So
a lot of ifs, Richard. A lot of ifs and caveats.
And then finally it says, we will jointly agree governance for the post-announcement period. So we haven't got it yet. We haven't decided yet. We will agree it in the future. So far from this being confirmation of lots of detail, it was actually, in my view, and I'm trying not to be cynical, Nigel, it was basically almost like an agreement to agree. As lawyers would say, that is just an agreement to agree.
Yeah.
So in contract terms, about as much use as an ashtray on a motorbike.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's all great. I still stand by what we said last week. This is a good aspiration to have, but I'd like to see a bit more kind of grit.
And in super nerd mode again, it's reinstatement of the Leamside line because it never actually closed. So it's not a reopening. They just stopped using it.
That's beyond nerd. That's called, you have just won this week's pedant corner, right? Well done, Nigel.
I didn't say I was in super nerd mode, but it was never.
Okay,
it was never formally closed, was it? They just stopped using it.
I think you'd struggle now anyway, because I think quite a lot of the track got kind of, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, what was there is no longer there in many places. There you go. Anyway, so that's the NPR update this week.
So there we go. Keeps on giving. Right, regular listeners will recall the debacle. Good word is debacle. I like debacle.
It is a good word, that. I like it.
Of the 0700 Ghost train from Manchester to London, which, although Avanti West Coast and Network Rail had jointly agreed to run in the December 2025 timetable, ORR had instead said no on the grounds of performance risk on the congested West Coast main line. After quite the furore, another good word, ORR backed down the same day, after you've been on the radio, Richard, that the story broke, with, it has to be said, a little bit of egg on its face. However, Chair of the Transport Select Committee wasn't done, and Ruth Cadbury MP wrote to ORR asking him to explain what on earth had happened. A bit of a WTF moment, I think. And on January 13th, the ORR replied. It's a 4-page letter from ORR Chief Exec John Larkinson, complete with an annex of detailed responses to specific questions. It is nothing if not detailed. It is also searingly honest and includes the following. And you do not often hear anyone talking like this. Had we known, what we now know, we could have made a different decision. The team also missed opportunities to escalate key information received after our decision to directors and myself, but when I reviewed the case, we moved quickly to maintain the service for passengers. At the time our decision was taken on September 22nd, 2025, there were, however, 3 critical points that had not been made clear to us. First, that the ECS move would be fully crewed. Second, that the fully crewed ECS would leave from Manchester Piccadilly Station and not from Longside Depot. Third, that this train had to arrive at Euston by a specific time as the coaching stock was needed for the 0930 Euston to Glasgow, and no other coaching stock could be used to form that service as rolling stock diagrams for the December 2025 timetable were well developed by that point. While the team assessing the application contacted Network Rail for additional information, it did not contact Avanti. I recognise that had we contacted Avanti, the 3 points above are likely to have been made clear. And then John goes on, and credit to him, I take full responsibility for what happened, and we are strengthening our processes to reflect the lessons we have learned. First of all, let's just say all credit to John for holding his hand up and saying, we got this wrong. I take responsibility for it. We just didn't know. But we didn't even ask Avanti. I mean, bit of an arse and elbow moment, isn't it, Richard, to make a decision like that without having all that information, that it went from Piccadilly, not long sight, it was fully crewed, and the stock was...
Can I have my pedantry moment?
Oh, go on.
So it wasn't that they didn't do that before they made the decision. They made a decision in September, but then further facts came to light, and the process didn't work to enable them to reconsider that decision. I think that was the key thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is being very, very pernickety, really. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's an extraordinary letter. Well done, John, for kind of taking one, for the team, really. The cynic, which I think is unfair, actually will say, oh, well, he's kind of said he's going anyway. So
it wouldn't have made any difference if he was staying 2 years. You and I know, John. And
yeah, I agree. I don't think it would have made any difference, Nigel.
That said, ORR haven't been completely sort of wearing sackcloth and ashes, have they? Heidi Alexander posted on X on December 1st to say that the rail minister, Pete Hendy, had urged ORR to reconsider. However, ORR couldn't resist pointing out, and I have to say, I wouldn't have been able to resist pointing it out either, Richard. The second, the ORR was referring to formal letters from the DFT, was a formal letter from Lord Hendy on December 1st, 2025, to ORR's chair, Declan Collier, see Annex 2. The letter from Lord Hendy was received after ORR's decision to allow the service to continue as a passenger train.
It's brilliant, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it was a bit ouch. You might think you're the rail minister, but actually, by the way, just so you know, it had no bearing whatsoever, your letter,
because we'd already done it.
We'd already done it. I mean, they were a bit like that, really. I mean, they had a bit of a pop at everybody in fairness, which it was almost like, if we're going down, then we're going to kind of take a few of you with us. So, Network Rail didn't really make this clear. Avanti didn't really make this clear. We hadn't been told it was this, that, and the other. He doesn't duck ultimately taking responsibility for not reversing the decision, but he certainly makes sure that we all know it's not just the ORR in the ORR's view. I think the real issue with this, though, those who are perhaps the architects of the new way of working in the railways bill will go, and that is why we need a single directing mind where decisions can be taken instead of this kind of bit of a mess where it's almost like, he says, she says, facts don't get transmitted, people make the wrong decision. That is why we are doing what we're doing. I think it's just simply strengthened that line, really. Whether you agree with that or not, that I think is what's happened.
So let's bring on the directing mind of you can have that, and you can clear off. And sooner we get that, the better, the better.
With a clear and robust appeals process, Nigel, to ensure that GBR do not behave in an irrational and discriminatory manner. I'm sure you meant to say all of that.
I did, absolutely, and indeed. And also, before we move on from this one, I think you and I also, it wouldn't hurt just to wish John all the best in retirement, because I had long years of career working on the railway, not least some of them for you.
Yeah, it was great. And who says he's retired? I hope he's.
Sorry.
Else. Well, I don't know.
I'm guilty of the worst sin of assumption. Then.
He's leaving the ORR, but I mean, who knows? It's fun. We'll see what comes.
Well, as we're talking about later, they're looking for a new chair for GBR. Who knows?
Well, Andrew Haynes left Network Rail, and we thought, well, that's going to be it for a while. And then 2 or 3 months later, there we are. He's back as chair of DFTO. So, yeah, there's now so weird as the railway industry.
Indeed, so.
We are now calling at a short ad break. Do not alight here.
Now, I don't know about you, but I do find there's a certain amount of anxiety when booking a train ticket. Have I got the right date? Have I got the right ticket? Have I got the right time? I sort of triple check the origin and destination. I'm sure I'm not the only person. I know Nigel has some of the same issues. Why do we all feel it's this difficult? I'm fairly convinced it's the risk attached to making a mistake. Many operators and retailers charge you an admin fee, usually £10, for amending an incorrect ticket. And if you're travelling as a group with separate tickets, you have to pay that per ticket. But one ticket retailer that offers a way to remove some of that anxiety is Tickety Boo, found at mytickettyboo.com. because they don't charge any fees. No fees for booking, no fees for changing a ticket, and no fees for refunds. If you've changed your plans or you've just booked the wrong ticket, there's no need to panic. They're not going to punish you. You can just relax, get on with your day, knowing that you've booked the right ticket without the fees, without the faff. And to encourage you to give them a try, Tickety Boo is offering Green Signals listeners a £5 discount on your first booking with them by using code GreenSignals5 at myticketyboo.com. You can find the link and the code in the description so that you can give an anxiety-free booking a try.
And now, back to the show.
Okay, following our interview with Mark Hopwood, Managing Director of Great Western last week, we got another interview to tell you about this week. It's with Mark Phillips, Chief Exec of the Rail Safety and Standards Board. And Richard caught up with Mark recently to chat about standards, who decides how to initiate them, whether the costs of implementation are taken into account in the assessment of them, and a few really big issues such as this one, when Richard asked Mark about driver-only operation.
I wanted to ask about a very thorny issue. It's not niche, it's actually quite a big issue because I suppose it relates again to system risk and the approach to system risk. And it's the question around driver-only operation or driver-controlled operation. Why is this so thorny? Because, back in the day when we both started, a second member of staff was on a train, had guards duties, dispatched the train, and worked with a specific role around with the driver. We've seen a significant increase over the years of driver-controlled operation using monitors and cameras and so on, even driver-only operation. There's a strong body of belief, though, that says, no, you should have a second person on the train in a safety critical role. And there's that debate is ongoing. What's your view of that? What role could and does the RSSB have in helping the various parts of the industry to navigate through what is actually quite an emotive issue?
So again, we need to apply the evidence. What does the evidence and the data tell us here? And the evidence is that driver-only or driver-controlled operation is safer than being dispatched by a conductor or even a platform member of staff. So that's the evidence. Now, in terms of, what does this mean for jobs and other roles across the industry? It's perfectly proper for the RMT to represent its members for the roles, and our job is not to define what the resource requirements are. And I absolutely see the case that another person on a train can provide hugely useful services in terms of additional support for those that need more accessibility and for providing customer service and all of that. And I think one thing that's important to recognise is that society generally in Britain is getting older. And so people, if they want to travel by train, probably going to need and have a greater demand for support and assistance to get on and off a train, even if they can travel independently on the train itself. So if anything, there's probably a strengthened case to have additional staff on the train to deal with that. But in terms of...
So, we'll publish the full interview with Mark at midday on Tuesday, February the 2nd. But I do commend everyone to listen to it. Dry, it most certainly is not.
No, it absolutely isn't. He was punchy, wasn't he?
He
very,
was.
very, very clear. So definitely worth a listen. I agree.
And another example of a well-seasoned, time-served career railwayman who really knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and a good operator. He knows how the railway works. Yeah.
And now it's time to thank everyone who supports us. First of all, thanks to RIA, the Railway Industry Association, our programme supporter, and to Rail Business Daily, our media supporter. Then a big thank you to everyone who's left us a super thanks on YouTube this week. And you all are Big List, John Hedger, Mike Heinsohn-Evans, Andrew Seddon, Alan Kirkman, Peter Curtis, Caroline Cleveley, John Kirkman, Ian Maitland, Graham Whitley, Bob Walsh, Alistair Rutledge, D412 Video, the Independent Brigline Rail Group, John W. and Chris Exley. Thank you to everyone who leaves us a super thanks. We really do value your support. It enables us to do what we do.
Absolutely right. And thanks also to Mark's Trains, Planes and Trams, who upgraded to a silver membership this week. Now, we do publish a list of all our amazing members in the end credits of the show. And if you're not already a member and you'd like to support what we do, please click join if you're watching on YouTube. It helps you through the process there. Or you can click the link to our Patreon site and then find out more details there about how to join via Patreon. They both work just the same. The members do really make Green Signals possible, as Nigel has just said, and we do reward you with quite a few things, including quite a lot of early content and exclusive content releases as well. So please do check out the membership if you enjoy what we do.
Indeed so. And now it's time for this week's Railway News Roundup. The government has announced the recruitment process for the chair of Great British Railways at last. According to the DFT, it's a once-in-a-generation leadership role to transform Britain's railways. We are seeking an outstanding chair to lead GBR, shaping its culture, strategy and customer-first mission as one of the UK's most significant public bodies. Too right. Commitment is for a minimum of 2.5 days a week, remuneration of between £200,000 to £300,000, and a term of 3 years with a possibility of reappointment. Gayton B. Sanderson are running the process on the DFT's behalf, so if you're interested, you know who to call. Okay, Richard, let's take this one head on. The rumour mill cranked up immediately and started mentioning your name.
Oh, the phone's been burning. Not. No. It is quite an interesting thing, this. I did see an utterly stupid, I can't even remember which newspaper it was, Nigel, headline, Rail Czar. I mean, they're so lazy. Yeah. It's a bit like when people are unhappy. Oh, it's going to be a kick in the teeth, a stab in the back, a slap in the face. I mean, come up with something original, please, right? It's not a rail czar. It is the chair of Great British Railways. Not difficult, right? So, and all they wanted to do was moan about how much they were going to get paid, really. And I tend to take the view you get what you pay for, right? Simple as that. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. And do you know what? I really hope in this process that they avoid, this is the recruiter, so obviously it's a DFT, they avoid the temptation to recruit somebody who think will bring fresh ideas, a new approach, doesn't come from the railways, got a different perspective. And all I would say is, please don't. Actually, the CEO is going to have one of the toughest jobs in the country, right? And they need a chair who can be a combination of support, mentor, friend, challenger, whatever. And that chair needs to know how it works. Doesn't mean that they need to be dyed-in-the-wool railway. They need to have some other external skills as well. I completely agree with that. But I really hope, Nigel, that they resist the temptation to go complete left field with this. Actually, for the next few years, we need a very strong, focused team, and teaching a chair about an industry they don't know much about, no one's got time for that.
We've been there before, haven't we? Exiles from Ford and BP and God knows where.
And some of them are better than others, and they're not people who don't necessarily want to do it or kind of. It's just that you just get that inevitable hiatus whilst they learn, and we haven't got. There's just no time for that. So that is my real plea. But anyway, it'll no doubt the stories will run on it. Thank goodness they're doing it, right? So hurrah for that, as you said, at last. So they need to crack on. It's good. Thanks to John Kirkman for this one, Nigel. HS2 has started tunnelling to Euston this week. I think yeah, it is hurrah. They confirmed that tunnel boring machine Madeline, we had a bit of a laugh at that in the Bowker household, as you can imagine, has launched, I think, from the Old Oak Commons site on the up line, with TBM Karen launching for the down line in about a month's time. The tunnel boring machines, which I have to say, Stef and I have had the privilege to go on and be at the cutting head when these things are working. It is still the most incredible railway thing I think I've ever done. They're expected to progress up to 150 metres a week at a depth. There's a lot into it, and a depth below ground surface to the top of the tunnel varying between 35 and 40 metres. That's quite a long way down, right? Anyway, both are expected to complete their journey to the Euston Cavern. That sounds quite exciting, doesn't it? It sounds like wasn't that the Beatles? Yeah. Anyway, the Euston Cavern by late June 2027. Hurrah.
Cut and cover, it is not.
No, not 40 metres down. It certainly isn't.
Curious one from Network Rail here, Richard. NR has announced that passengers are set to benefit from a major programme of essential upgrades to the West Coast Main Line. Hurrah again, is it? The railway that connects London, the Midlands, the North West and Scotland. On 20th of January, Network Rail unveiled, quote, the next step in its plans to overhaul Britain's busiest mixed-use railway for the first time in more than 50 years. However, the press release went on to say that the upgrades comprised renewing overhead line equipment, track and signalling systems between Warrington and the Scottish border, renewing track across the approach into Manchester Piccadilly, renewing overhead line equipment through Birmingham New Street, renewing track and overhead line equipment between Milton Keynes and London Euston. All vitally important, yeah, but every single one of those said renewing. Now, renewals do represent an upgrade, I suppose, with a small u, but not in the sense we normally use the word, Richard. Some spin here, methinks.
Yeah, I think a little bit of overselling, probably, wanting to put some good news out. And it is good news. I mean, renewal is important. I mean, the control period has seen a very significant reduction in renewals on some really important assets, like plain line track renewals, for instance. So we're both, I think we're saying the same thing here,
yeah.
Nigel. We're both delighted that they're renewing the railway. And you've just made a really important point, right? I remember from what you have, and it's actually so important, it's worth just kind of, flattering you further.
You acknowledging the point and repeating it. Go on.
I know. Easy. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. You had to have one at some point, right? So when we were doing the West Coast route modernisation, there were quite a few schemes where actually, despite my best efforts sometimes with a certain rail regulator, to point out that renewals and enhancements, if you did them at the same time, you got a better outcome, right? That's an important point. So I'm sure there is an element of that here, perhaps. But yeah, renewals are renewals, and just get on with it. It's good stuff.
Well, you said something there. I mean, that quote earlier on about first plans to overall busiest mixed use for the first time in more than 50 years. Surely you did a bit in the Trent Valley.
No, I think this is, yes, it did. But a lot of this is north of Preston, so which was electrified in 76. So there's your 50 years. So there is the Tri-Link project. I think it's called Tri-Link. I'm doing this a bit on the hoof, so apologies to Network Rail, I've got that wrong. But there's a lot of work over, north of Preston, because that has not been renewed since it was done in the 70s.
And I think that was 74, not 76, but no, man.
Was it?
We're both in Super Nerd.
Oh, well, there you go. In which case, well done. I think you're actually right.
Sorry, I think there's a glitch on the line there.
There was a glitch on the line. I'll try and fix that in post-production. No worries. Right, anyway, thanks to Stephen Bates for this one. And although it's not a national story, this, Nigel, there's a little bit of history gone nonetheless. The former GWR shed at Gloucester Horton Road, which I think was 85B, I believe, anyway. Yep, with its vast, and it was vast, I've seen the pictures of 10 road shed, sidings, turntable, coaling stages. It was a home to over 100 locomotives at its peak. I think closed in 65 or 66 when steam ended on GWR. It was subsequently used for P-way equipment. I think it's actually used till relatively recently for bits of storage and stuff. Anyway, I had read that some people have been trying to preserve it. They clearly haven't succeeded, which is a shame. You can't save everything, but it's sad nonetheless. And it is no more. It is at the time of the pictures that were taken by Stephen's friend Jerry Matthews. Thank you, that's Jerry Matthews. Thank you to Jerry for those. It was close to being demolished. So yeah, A shame.
An interesting question for green signals, Richard. Are there any steam sheds still standing? I mean, I remember going up the West Coast not that long ago in recent years. I always used to look out at Stafford for the old steam shed was alongside the station. Of course, at Bescott, you could see the one from the motorway, but both of those have gone now. Are there any left anywhere still in use?
Well,
Question
Didcot
for
is the
green
one
signal.
that springs to mind.
No, I'm talking
but...
about on the rail or derelict or
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
because it's
I don't know.
Carnforth as well.
Yeah,
But
great question.
Just interest really. Thanks to Paul from the Independent Brigline Rail Group for this one. LNER appears to have given way to political pressure at my local station in Peterborough and agreed to add a new 0743 departure to London following recent timetable changes. It will mean apparently about 600 extra seats each weekday morning. According to the Peterborough Telegraph, local MP Andrew Pakes and North West Cambridgeshire MP Sam Carling have met LNER reps several times to press for changes. Apparently, Mr Pakes also met Rail Minister Lord Hendy, who the Peterborough Telegraph say backed calls for extra stops in Peterborough. Richard, is that the same Lord Hendy who told the Transport Committee recently that he came up with a timetable for the
well, he signed it off.
the
He
East Coast
approved
signed
it.
it off,
Yeah.
So we spoke to LNER to ask if there's any risk that this additional service could add performance risk to the already congested East Coast Main Line. What do you reckon, Richard?
Well, we love LNER.
We do.
Right? And we're not about to not love them.
We're big
with this
chums
story.
and always will be.
Yeah, they run a great service, but this one has left us scratching our heads a bit. So if you look at the timetable, which I've got here, from the May timetable in 2025, so the one that ended when the new timetable came in December, right? There was from Peterborough, there was a 7:17, a 7:39, a 7:48, and an 8:08. So there was a train at 7:48, right? And that was between the 7:39 and the 8:08. In the December timetable, that changes to a 7:10, a 7:32, which also has a set down only at Stevenage, and then there's a gap to 8:11. So that train, so actually the one before the gap has gone earlier and the one after it's gone later, and there's nothing in the middle. So it's quite a big gap, right? So we asked LNER about it, what's going on. And they said, because we said, is putting this back going to lead to any performance issues? And they said, well, no, not really. They've said, we expect, as you'll know, following the introduction of the new timetable, we've listened to and acted upon feedback, obviously from the local MP, who's been very vocal, and have increased peak time capacity at Peterborough Station. We expect the introduction of the 7:43 departure to London to have very little, if any, impact on overall performance. So we kind of said, well, okay, why did you take it out then? Because I thought the whole point of this East Coast Main Line timetable was to cram more in and manage the performance risk. And they've eventually come back and said, well, as you'll be aware, the December 2025 timetable was an industry-wide change. Well, yeah, okay. Which required close collaboration between Network Rail, East Coast Main Line, passenger and freight train operators, and other rail industry partners. This is a totally new timetable, meaning a huge change in calling patterns and departure and arrival times across the network. We confirmed at the time of launch that we'd monitor the changes and act on feedback. After working closely with local stakeholders, we will be introducing a 7:43 departure towards London, which will add nearly 600 seats every weekday morning, which is a great answer, but just not actually to the question we asked, really. I mean, they took a train out and they're now putting it back, and they're saying that it's not really, I know they're putting it at a slightly different time, which allows them to say it's a new service, but come on, guys, right? And actually, they're saying it doesn't really have a performance impact. So I think they just kind of messed up here, really. Shouldn't really have taken that one out, because if it's had no performance impact, why did it get taken out? Great that it's come back. Yeah, drop the ball a bit. I
can talk with a bit of knowledge about this one, because there always used to be a 7:20 and a 7:40 about. And the 7:40 was always my chosen choice for the 3 and 5 times a week I was in London, largely because in latterly it was a Mark IV set and a 91 from Leeds.
Oh, you griser.
So
Right.
I'm guessing that all they did was just take the stop out and the train rumbled through the platform. And that is one of the things which has caused the grief from the MPs. So they've just put the stop back in, I'm assuming, or something like it. But there's always been a train at about 7:40. So to say there wasn't one before is a bit naughty.
I think that's the point. I'm not sure. There's no. I couldn't see a train that now just goes to King's Cross but doesn't stop there. So I'm not. I can't. I wouldn't accuse them of that. We'd need to check that. But you're absolutely right that there was a train before December around that time.
And it varied each year at 7:40, 7:39.
And now it's back.
Yeah.
So there you go. I suppose, good there's a bit of people power.
I'm not surprised it's caused grief, Richard. I say I use that 3 and 5 times a week and it was always very busy, lots of people, and it will have caused a lot of grief.
Absolutely. Anyway, you have listened, you have put it back.
So well done.
Kudos for that, and we still love you. So there you go.
And we always will. And
we always.
And that's the news round for this week. If you'd like to send us any snippets of news, email at news@greensignals.org. And if we use yours, sorry,
Right.
You'll get a name check.
You will indeed. Which means it's time to do the quiz. Now, last week's question was this, Nigel. If I had to worm my way onto the platform, from where would I be catching a train? And the answer was Great Malvern, which many, many people knew. There's a covered walkway, which from above, I think the photos are all copyrighted, so we haven't got one to show you. But if you just go on YouTube and just type in Great Malvern Worm Walkway, or whatever, you'll see what I mean. It's sort of slightly set into the ground. It's sort of depressed. So it looks like, it really does look like a worm from above. And it connects the Hereford-bound platform with a building that used to be the Imperial Hotel, and it was for first-class passengers to make sure they didn't get wet. I think it's now a school. I think it's listed, and I think there have been chats about restoring it, but it does look like a worm. So if you said Great Malvern, you were absolutely right. And the winner, randomly chosen from the many correct answers we had, was Joshua, I think it's Cavell or Cavell. So Joshua Cavell. Well done, Joshua. If you could send us another email, please, to quiz@greensignals.org. We'll get your mug out to you. So there you go. And to this week's quiz question, which is from listener Colin Lee, who has actually appeared on Green Signals because he's actually also the Planning and Performance Director for Transport for Wales. And you remember when I went to Huntlyth and we had that?
I do.
The local railway. Colin was on that, which was great. Anyway, this is a great question. I love this question. What links these 3 stations? Right? Ambergate, Goole, and one of my favourite ones, Chorlton cum Hardy. So what links Ambergate, Goole, and Chorlton cum Hardy?
I have no idea.
Right. If you think you know, and you are clearly not called Nigel Harris, send your answers to quiz@greensignals.org by midday, Saturday, January 31st. We'll put all the correct answers in a hat and select a winner at random. Now, I did want to mention one little thing, Nigel. You'll love this because you're a historian of chap. Do you remember last week's question was, it was actually the previous week, but we told the answer last week, was 3 stations that had, what did they have in common? They were Whipping and Melton Constable and Ashburton. And I said that a couple of people had suggested royal or aristocratic connections, a private platform or a royal waitering or whatever. And I could find evidence of that at Whipping and at Melton Constable, but not at Ashburton. Well, anyway, so we didn't allow that as an answer. Well, I'm very grateful to Alan Taylor, who's the chairman of the South Devon Railway, who wrote to us and said this. He said, although it was the Dart Valley Light Railway who first secured the former Ashburton branch for preservation back in 1966, the remaining section from Buckfastleigh is now the South Devon Railway. And he talks about forming a charity in 1990 to operate the line. They now attract around 100,000 visitors a year, major contributor to heritage and local tourism. We've got a very healthy balance sheet, right, which is terrific. He said, following an opening by the Dart Valley Railway in 1969 between Buckfastleigh and a field outside Totnes, we have built a complete GWR station and a footbridge link to Totnes Town and Main Line. I thought that's great. This was the interesting bit. He said, the DVR ran the very last 3 public passenger trains to Ashburton on the 2nd of October, 1971. The first one of their own, followed by an excursion from Swansea, and the final was an excursion from Paddington. He said, I remember it well because I was the DVR guard for the one from Swansea.
Okay.
He said, whilst Ashburton did not have any direct royal association that we are aware of, the link is probably because the Ashburton branch was one of the regular overnight stabling points for the Royal Train.
Ah, right.
On visits to the West Country from the 1930s until its closure by BR in 62. It was thought that was an end to the royal connections until, and I love this, the 19th of December last year, when we were asked once again to host the Royal Train, which arrived from Windsor in the early hours with the King Charles III on board. He completed his overnight sleep in peaceful surroundings before we took the train back to Totnes Main Line for him to go by road to the Britannia Royal Naval College at Dartmouth for a passing parade. What an absolutely wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Alan. That's brilliant. So there, the royal connection. There is a royal connection with the line, right? I think the answer still stands, not the station at Ashburton. But that is a great story. There you go.
I love these little yarns that come up and anecdotes.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
It's all part of the richness of the tapestry of heritage, isn't it?
Yeah.
A good story to end on this week, Richard, and thanks to Simon Wadsworth for alerting us to this one. It appeared in the Independent on January the 21st. The Scottish Government has announced over £113,000 in funding in this financial year for the 19th century Spey Viaduct near Elgin, which you'll recall collapsed into the River Spey recently following erosion around its foundations. Apparently, this is to fund investigation work, which would reduce the cost to the council of the investigation into the structure and the cause of the collapse by £37,000. Funding of £16,500 has also been made available for a high-level economic assessment of the role of the bridge and for provision of diversionary routes at £60,000. The total comes to £113,500. That's the good news. However, Moray Council shared with us a budget paper that was recently presented to the council, and in it it's pointed out that just to remove the two collapsed spans, which the council have to do because they're legally liable for it, is likely to cost in the order of £500,000 alone. Big numbers. So heaven knows how much future reinstatement or replacement's going to cost. For a long-term solution, including consideration of repair or replacement, Moray Council have developed a plan with 4 key assessment steps that will provide clarity on the impact the collapse has had on the riverbed and the land surrounding the site. It's really good news that Transport Scotland has stepped in to help, but there's some big costs coming if that's going to be replaced. But it's, in my heart, I can't see him fixing it, putting it all back up again. Can you, Richard? Which is a shame because it was a beautiful bridge.
Oh, I don't know. You know, I mean, never say never, really.
I hope they do.
I mean, for those who've been watching on YouTube, you'll have seen some pictures from the report, the Moray Council report, and it's just amazing how much the river has moved. I mean, they're living organic things, aren't they? So you can see what the challenges are there, but I don't know.
I hope they do.
You know what? I do hope they do, because it is an iconic thing, and actually the diversions, I think it's a bit of a kind of a long way around job, isn't it? So We'll see. Well, fingers crossed.
Indeed so. And sadly, that's all we've got time for this week. Thanks ever so much, as always, for watching or listening. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really does help. And if you want to support us even more, find out about membership of Green Signals on YouTube or Patreon. But most importantly of all, join Richard and me again next week for this show, which will always be free. Until then, it's goodbye from me, and
it's goodbye from me.
Have a great week.